Look, if you read my books, I've been writing for a long time on the subject of the fabrication of words and how words are a big weapon. And for me, it's a description of the fact that we can destroy and we can bring separation to humanity just by changing the meaning of words. If all the words meant one simple truth and one unified truth, then everybody would understand how behavior would be based on those words. So the word esoteric is very, very important because it talks about a cardiocentric way of being, and cardiocentric simply means an intelligence that comes from the heart, an intelligence that is thoughtful of other people, an intelligence that is one unifying and understanding of life, and that people are to be working together. So if that's the way the word was understood, then we wouldn't have a problem with it. Now the word has been changed, and there's been no check as to, and no authority on how the word was changed from its originality coming from Pythagoras, meaning innermost, in other words, coming from our essence. When Pythagoras first started talking about the heart, the innermost, our essence, and essentially it was a word that was going to describe what we truly are on the inside before society changes us. And so he was trying to bring back society into a way that was much more coming from an essence rather than the fabrication of the fabric that society turns us into. To be the real me is esoteric. That's what essentially, when somebody says I'm esoteric, it means that I'm not playing ideals or beliefs. I'm just being who I truly am, and I'm very comfortable in my own body. The bastardization of the word esoteric is no different to the bastardization of the word religion or many other words. You know, today religion is an institutionalization. But in its beginning it was a word that meant rebinding and rebonding and reuniting and returning, and essentially to be in a society where everybody was in mutual relationship. So the esoteric has had its similar path in the sense that it's been changed from its original meaning. And if you can bastardize the word esoteric, you guarantee a society that isn't seeking its own essence. In other words, if we remove the true meaning of the word esoteric, we don't have a word that describes who we truly are. And so we essentially grow up to be adults that we are fashioned by society. But that may not be who we truly are. And the word esoteric is very powerful in this. The point is, everybody to their own, and there comes a point where the life that you are living may not be the truth for you, and that you've tried everything. And if we had a word that described something that allowed you to understand that there was more to you, and that word was esoteric, then that would be a very powerful word in society, because we can actually say, I'm not ready to be esoteric, I don't want to be esoteric, or we can say, I would like to be esoteric. But then we all know and understand that what we are saying is that we're returning to our inner heart, our very loving and essential way of being. Look, if you change the meaning of a word, you remove a fabric of society that has an essence to understand itself. And so we constantly are taking away the true meaning of words. And if we take the true meaning of words, anybody can basically do anything and be labeled or get away with any form of behavior. It's like the word good. What is good and what is bad? Everybody has a version of what is good and what is bad. But what's good for one person may not be good for another person. So there's another example of how the word has been bastardized. It's not just the word esoteric that needs to be reclaimed. That's very important from the point of view, understanding that the word means to come back to living from your heart and to be thoughtful in a heartful way, in a loving way, in other words. But we also need to reclaim the word good. What exactly is good? And what exactly is bad? And here's another word for you. What exactly is health in today? Is it absence of disease, or is it true vitality? Is it an aliveness? And you know, we constantly modify the meaning of words to adjust to a declining society, rather than upholding the highest morality and saying you are esoteric or you are not esoteric. And that's okay, that's not a judgment, but we can see what you're choosing to live or not. The bastardization or the modification or alteration of the meaning of words simply suits a society that is avoiding its truth. It's trying to avoid where it's actually at. If we modify, for example, if the word health meant and was defined by true vitality, a person who doesn't need coffee, doesn't need sugar, is always alive, never moody, spunky, beautiful, essential, and understanding of life, and always energetic and willing to commit, then who would fit the word health? Because the whole world is not fitting in. So what we need to do is change the word, and then that person who is truly healthy may have a different definition, and everybody else feels comfortable because they can call themselves healthy because we've changed the word. Look, it comes back down to an enormous responsibility we have to ourselves as a society, because if we have true meaning of words, then we will have a true understanding of where society is at any moment. But if the word health today means something different to what it meant in the 60s, in the 1960s, or the 1400s, or 2,500 years ago when Pythagoras talked about the word esoteric, if we change the word and the meaning today, then what has happened to us as a society? Well, the reason we don't want to know the true meaning of the words is because we're declining, and we don't want to admit that we are declining. It's a form of dishonesty. We're not just changing the meaning of the words, we're lying to ourselves. Look, if a healthy person does not need coffee and the stimulation of caffeine to get them up in the morning, to get them going, or to keep them going through the day or get through a project, then that person wouldn't be able to call themselves healthy, because it's defined by not needing caffeine. In other words, you are healthy and you are energetic. So the whole world doesn't want the word healthy to mean that you don't need coffee, because the whole world is drinking caffeine, or many people are. So by changing the word, you start to feel better. But in that comfort, in that accommodating of redefining words, we are losing the trend and the real standard of living in society. And that's where it's catching us. We're changing the words, but we're getting sicker. And we need to understand that we need to bring some truth back in the way in which we communicate. Look, it may be that the word esoteric has been deliberately altered and bastardized simply because there are those who do not want people to know and understand that there is an essence, and that they can be free of ideals and beliefs in that essence, and that they are very powerful when they are cardiocentric, meaning that their thoughtfulness comes from their heart and not just their head. And you know, there may be a history behind that, and that's up to people to decide by tracking the history of that word. As far as I'm concerned, I use it exclusively in my books. I don't mind labeling my own family esoteric. I don't mind labeling myself esoteric, simply because I am defined by the true meaning of that word. If somebody says to me that I am esoteric by their own definition, that would be a judgment based on a definition that I truly do not live. So I live by the true meaning of that word. I don't have a problem with it because I know its true meaning. And that's where it's about. It's about understanding the true meaning of the words and knowing who you are and living the truth to the best of your ability. In my business and in my philosophy, the word esoteric is integral because we're asking people to understand who they truly are, to be empowered by themselves, to not rely on anybody, to understand that there is a resource or a go-to place within themselves where they can find happiness, or where they can find steadiness, or where they can find something that is very real and solid and consistent. And that place is inside us. So that's how we use the word esoteric. As far as Germany is concerned, and I don't know how the word is pronounced in German.
Esoteric.
Esoteric. I won't even try. But the Germans themselves have to look at why has that word that essentially talks about being heartful and cardiocentric, thoughtful from your heart and thoughtful from your love. How does a word that means that has been allowed to be made into something that is not popular, something that perhaps is evil or not so good? How did the German people allow such a fantastic and society-building word allowed to get to where it is today, where the word is a dirty word, as we would say in English, and a rejection of something that's so powerful, when Germans themselves are very friendly people, very loyal and very committed by nature. So why would they not have a word that unifies and describes them as the deep people that they are? The answer to the question is the German people have to come together and discuss this, and not be rejected by the word, and not find offense in it. They have to essentially get together like old school, like olden days, where villagers came together to discuss things. You can't just let a dictionary or the media via propaganda or the authorities decide what the truth is. The people of any living place need to come together and say, this is who we truly are, and this is how we want life to be. Look, the point is not to have a war on who has the true meaning. The point is to understand what the true history of the word is, and understand that you can be free to live that word without the vilification that comes with it. Otherwise, we're returning to the Third Reich. We're returning to being called a Jew. And is today the new word esoteric? Are we going to be called esoteric and suddenly you are dehumanized because you're being called esoteric? That's crazy. Germany has already learned from this, and they have to move on and not allow words to destroy and to form a society. They need to understand that the true meaning of word is what Germany is about. It is a self-examination for Germany to look deep within themselves and understand that there is no guilt about the history. They have moved on. They're a beautiful country again. They're very thoughtful, very inviting, and that's their nature. If we can look back and say the German people were denatured, and therefore there should be no shame as to what occurred in the past. But now they are back to their true nature. And if this is so, they should embrace being a very loving race, just like we all are all over the world. There is no difference. And so they should embrace a word that actually incorporates and encourages being thoughtful and understanding from a heartful place. Perhaps there's a link because many of the German people are known to be in their heads, and maybe there isn't that truth that wants to be disclosed. But every German deep down wants love, just like everybody else in the world. So why not admit that there is a place within your body that can be totally self-nurturing, self-caring, very delicate, very expressing in the sense of how you care for another person. And if you want to switch your head on and go to work with that, you have a choice. But at least you are understanding of the fact that you are not just a walking head, but that you are also a walking heart. Here we are in this interview talking about the German people, but the truth is we're all human beings. We're one family. We're a human species well before we are anything else. So it's not really just about Germans, and we can be described as Germans or Spanish or Italians simply by the geography of the country we live in. But above it all, we are human beings. And every human being in this place called Germany is no different to every human being in the rest of the world. And our essence is love. And we should never ever be ashamed of expressing the fact that that is what we want and that that is what we expect in our society. It's a very good question to ask, why not just forget about the word esoteric? It's already lost its meaning in the sense that it's been bastardized and changed. And why not begin with a brand new meaning? I have a philosophical point of view on that, and that is this. If we can understand that the word esoteric means to be living from your heart, and we can trace that back for 2,500 years, then we have an understanding that humanity knew always what the true fabric of society could be. It could be understood that 2,500 years ago, there were a group of people living in ancient Greece, particularly in Crete in Italy, which is now Italy, that knew and understood what the potential of human beings could be if they lived as a society coming from their heart. And so rather than developing a new word, we could just go back to the true meaning of the word and say, wow, we've had this for 2,500 years. Where did we go wrong? Why did we go wrong? Who changed it? And then we will know the effects and the authorities that try to interfere with a heartful society. And then we will have the true good guys and the true bad guys to heal. Super. So what I could say here is that if we lose the history of the word esoteric, then as a society we don't get to reflect what we have done to ourselves, how we have changed something that was very special, and where we are today. So if we are today a society that is not living lovingly, and everybody's only looking after themselves, we then need to say, in 2,500 years we have not evolved. And where are we? And why are we the way we are? And what is missing? And if the word esoteric means to be thoughtful with ourselves, coming from our heart and more embracing, then we can only blame ourselves for choosing to lose our own way. You can put anybody into their heart and get them to express from there, and it's a completely different way that you're hearing the same human being that you were hearing when they were in their head. And that's a treasure, that's a miracle, that's a beautiful experience when somebody can connect to the esoteric, which is the inner being, the innermost on the inside of them, their heart, and when they start expressing from there, it's a beautiful experience. And more relationships should be based on the esoteric principle.